Okay. Thank you, everybody. You should see on the screen that we've started recording the webinar. So thank you all for taking some time to come and join us today. We really appreciate it. And the aim of this webinar is to identify practical solutions, because we're feeling the pain of these warehouses, and we want to look at changes to policy, to regulations, so that we can better manage and mitigate the impacts of these developments, because they are impacting financial issues, the value of housing, the mental and the physical health of communities. And we're going to hear a bit more about that from the speakers this morning. And the webinar came about really following numerous discussions, because this is impacting communities nationwide. The groups who are being affected by large-scale warehouses built so close to the homes. And whilst we all recognise the importance of logistics infrastructure, communities are feeling very concerned that the issues that they're raising are being dismissed or completely ignored, despite the significant consequences. So we've got a packed agenda for you today. We're going to hear about 3 specific case studies that will highlight many of the issues that you've all raised with me. And then we're recording the webinar so we can share the detail with the MHCLG. They were invited to attend today, by the way, but they didn't respond to our invitation, despite repeated chasing. So hopefully they will listen when we send the outputs from the webinar. But please do put any immediate questions or observations into the chat. We'll try and respond during the webinar, but if that's not possible, because it might not be, we'll pick up on outstanding points afterwards. And Caroline's going to share our report, which is called Besieged by B8, which brings together a number of the issues that have been highlighted by communities up and down the country, about the impacts on people, the environment, and public finances, actually, in relation to these developments. So just looking at a quick summary of the key issues that we're going to hear about. If you identify anything locally that isn't on this list, and I appreciate it's just a summary list, drop us a note in the chat. We're keen to hear anything from you, your observations, your questions. This is all about you and how you've been impacted. And you'll see from our report, the Besieged by B8's report, that we picked up huge levels of imbalance in the planning system. And it's clear, for example, that a resident wishing to build a fence or a garage is treated very differently from a business wishing to construct a 22-metre high warehouse adjacent to residential properties. And there's no respite for local communities, because these places operate on a 24/7 basis. So combined with the appalling lack of investment in sustainable freight transport, what we end up with is huge numbers of HGVs on local roads 24 hours a day, every single day, which isn't good news for the environment, for our NHS, or for nature. Never mind the communities that are impacted with those and many other issues which you're going to hear about. So trust is at an all-time low when it comes to the planning system. So we'll come back to all these issues, but with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to John Peters from the Astley Warehouses Action Group. He's done a great job of publicising the outrage from his community following the erection of 18-metre high warehouses adjacent to housing and a school. So over to you, John. Tell us about this wonderful award that you're your warehouse has won.
Yeah, yeah. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm John Peters. I'm one of the founders of the Astley Warehouse Action Group. I have been compared to the Mr. Bates of the post office, but I'm still awaiting my OBE on that one. Yeah, about a month ago, we were awarded the 2026 Carbuncle of the Year award. We were awarded this with a block of flats in London, actually, a joint award. And I just want to read you something that was in one of the comments. This is from Fence magazine and Channel 4, who organises the award. And one of the comments says, and this sums up why we're still doing this 1 year on. Astley warehouses are in a different league, an immense and irredeemable blot on the community. Worse, it plays into the narrative that ordinary people are ignored by planners, politicians, and the moneyed classes. I am totally dumbfounded as to how such a thing secured consent. And basically, that sums up our initial feelings and thoughts and why we actually are here. Our action group was born through a sense of huge injustice, and some of those injustices I'll go on to now. If you can move on, Marge, please. So this is a chronology of how planning came about from 2006 to 2023, and obviously suffering the effects of the thing straight away. Note that 20 years earlier, it was designated as an industrial land. Don't assume, the first lesson really is, don't assume that because it's left as a field, that developers have forgotten about it. And this seems a common practice from talking to various other communities in our situation. In 2017, a hybrid outline plan was introduced, which was part housing and part industrial. This hybrid plan was quite sympathetic to the surrounding houses and had quite low profile industrial buildings, and included things like nature walks and kiddies playgrounds and so on. So the residents weren't particularly alarmed about this. From 2017, around 500 houses were built adjacent to the field. The industrial part of that hybrid plan was allowed to lapse conveniently. So 500 houses now appeared around the field. And then, of course, like in 2023, a new plan was submitted and approved in 2024, which was significantly different from the one that was originally proposed. Next slide, please. So we caused so much stir in Wigan that Wigan felt they had to prove to the nation that they did everything according to the book. They commissioned their own independent audit. The Planning Officers Society conducted this. This was not just like marking your own homework, we thought, but was like asking your mother to mark it, because the Planning Officers Society, the main aim is to support planning officers. However, I think they were quite surprised when one of the outcomes of the audit stated that the pre-consultation by the developer was wholly inadequate. And to us, that set the baseline for all future consultation, wholly inadequate. Wigan then did their own consultation, which they did to a bare minimum. There was no good practice. There was no public meeting. There were no scale models. We saw nothing. A couple of A4 sheets on lampposts, and I think letters sent to 90 adjacent houses, which for something this size was totally inadequate. We have evidence from FOIs as well that the planning committee had no idea what they were voting for, no idea of what 18.3 metre high warehouses would look like next to people's homes. There was no LVIA or EVIA conducted, and for a development of this size affecting so many families and homes, that was an outcry. Residents were unaware, also very important, were unaware of a judicial review. We'd not heard of anything like that before, and the 6 weeks window. I think had we been aware, we would have mobilised a lot quicker. There was, I think some of our success lies in our strength in our social media campaign, and surprisingly, well, perhaps not surprisingly, the council saw themselves victims as a result of our media campaign and threatened us with legal action, which again attracted a lot of immediate attention. A council actually threatening to sue their ratepayers. Next slide, please. So we engaged with the community from the outset. We realised the wealth of talent and knowledge literally on our doorstep. We had an abundance of people that worked in the building trade. We had people who were legal advisors, solicitors, and so on, and a lot of assistance started coming through our social media. People offering their services pro bono. We also delivered a stop notice to Wigan. You can see us all there on a wintry morning in the centre of Wigan, and we were met by, well, we weren't met by anybody in the offices. Conveniently, everybody was out of office at the time, but we still delivered our brown envelopes into the Wigan offices. So we met with the we challenged all the evidence. We did actually meet with the auditor and rallied, and we got over 250 objections to the traffic commissioner. We've also got a pending ombudsman report with him, and that's being considered. Next slide, please. This is us at the Manchester Combined Authority offices, and you can see Andy Burnham there. I actually contacted Andy Burnham through his weekly phone-in on Greater Manchester, and on there he said he would meet the residents, and true to his word, he did. We presented our case to him. He expressed some sympathy for the residents, but concluded his hands were tied. As the Metropolitan Mayor, he has no jurisdiction over the 10 boroughs with regard to planning. We have engaged our local MP, Michael Wheeler, from the onset, and he continues to meet and hear our concerns. Unfortunately, well, perhaps that's the wrong word, but Michael Wheeler is essentially a Salford MP that has Astley stuck on the end, and he has himself found this to be a disadvantage when speaking to Wigan about our problems. Our media campaign, as you may have seen, has been very, very successful. It's involved every TV channel bar Sky. We don't know why. Sky is the only one that's not been in touch with us. And every broadsheet and tabloid newspaper. We've also featured in the present series of Rip Off Britain. And if you go online, you can see that series. I think it was sometime, it's about number 4 in the series, and they did quite a good job of forwarding our case, and the advisor on there gave some good advice to communities at the end. Nearly always the television programs conclude with, you know, they can't believe what they are seeing, but unfortunately for us, they always move on to the weather next, and now for the weather, and we're left feeling a little bit deflated when they do that. But we're very appreciative of all the work the media has done and in presenting our case, and not only sort of the mainstream media, but YouTube channels, independent journalists, and so on. Fantastic job, and they've all been on board with us. Next slide, please. So, you know, one of the things that we want to highlight here is that the officer's report about this development cited 500 jobs on site that would be created by these 4 B8 warehouses. In reality, we've spoken to Whistle, who are one of the first people to move into to one of their warehouses, and from all accounts, their entire workforce, which is moving from Bolton to Astley. That's another question. Why are you moving to Astley? But they're moving from Bolton to Astley, and the entire workforce is coming with them. There are only going to be 8 new jobs, and I think 3 of those 8 jobs are HGV drivers. Recently, we've found out that Grace Overseas, a pharmaceutical logistics company, will be moving in. Again, to the best of our knowledge, this is a small company with about 20 employees, and we've only found 1 reference to a job, which is to cover a maternity leave. So the Unit 1 and Unit 2 haven't been let yet, but obviously they've got a lot of catching up to do to make that 500 deadline or quote. Okay, so I think that more or less concludes my presentation. I know it's been a bit fast and furious, but we will continue to fight this. We're proud to be part of the planning, the Community Planning Alliance. We've taken a lot of advice from the Community Planning Alliance, and we will go on until we get A, an apology, B, some accountability, and C, some kind of compensation for the tens of thousands of pounds that have been wiped off our properties. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's brilliant. I'm going to hand over now to Sharon Cole, who's going to be talking from the Staunch campaign, along with Jenny, I think, as well. So Sharon, can you introduce yourself and Jenny and your campaign?
Indeed. Hello, everyone. So my name's Sharon Cole, and this is Jen Snowden, my colleague. I'm a retired teacher, and on Staunch, I'm a secretary, fundraising team leader, habitats directive researcher, and I'm making links with the Community Planning Alliance and also working towards an all-party parliamentary group.
Yes, I'm Jenny, so I'm an HR manager by trade, working with Sharon on fundraising, forging links with MPs and members of our community and landowners in an attempt to galvanise support for our campaign.
So on Staunch as well, we are very lucky to have an environmental scientist, a retired head of county planning, a retired serious crime police officer, a website designer, an accountant, a flood warden, a member of CPRE's technical committee seeking landscape status for the Upper Valley, and town and village councillors. So we're very lucky to have that range of expertise. Next slide, please.
Titchmarsh is a village of 500 people, as you can see from the plan there. The market town of Thrapston is 10,000 people strong, and there are 35 villages and small towns along the A605, including the historic market town of Oundle. The 2 warehouses, which are shown in dark blue and yellow here, are actually the same size as Thrapston. Both sites are speculative applications that sit outside of the local plan. The first site, Castle Manor Farm in yellow, was determined at appeal. North Northants Council lost their right to determine the application due to the unreasonable amount of time that had elapsed from the application to the planning being launched. But North Northants Council, in their wisdom, decided to take it to committee anyway to see how they would have voted if they were able to determine, and they, to a person, voted against the application. The glebe land, which is the piece in dark blue, which is obviously church land, went to full committee but weeks later, and they voted in favour without any debate whatsoever. As you can see, the sites abut And so the same arguments were presented at both applications. We are a market town. We are bordered on many sides by growth towns, including Corby and Kettering, and there are millions and millions of square feet of warehousing and logistics available, not currently let. Next slide, please.
So these are 4 sites that we're talking about. 2 are warehouses and 2 are for solar farms with their sizes underneath. And to give a feel for it, our barrister stated our case that at 80-foot high, it's Assembly Stadium on stilts in open countryside, which is absolutely ridiculous. And this is also best and most versatile land, which we know is so important in these uncertain times. This land is also functionally linked land to a nearby special protection area and Ramsar site, and it has international legal protection, which is being ignored. There's a high number of protected species on the site, including golden plover, lapwing, and skylark, but these are not being protected at all. Next slide, please. So what have Staunch learned on our journey so far? Well, about the committee, there's lots of things there to consider, but an important thing is whatever you do to behave with integrity and only use verified facts to ensure your credibility. And we hope that we have gained that credibility. The other thing is you can tell from the list that we have that each committee member has a role of expertise so that they can have a strength in that role. And that's really important. Next slide, please.
At this point, I feel like I have to do some attack to Astley Warehouse campaign. The visibility that that you are generating is extraordinary, so congratulations on that. But I think it absolutely emphasises the need to be noisy and for momentum and to keep your community and the wider community on board. We have a designated person that manages all of our social media activities, so we get the message out there. We also have a website designer, so that all traffic can be directed there, so you can actually see the minutiae of what we're doing, because there's no way we can possibly get that message across just by speaking to people. Next slide, please.
So, goodness me, haven't I learned a lot about the planning process since I joined Staunch 5 years ago? We've learned that studying the detail is so important because it helps you discover the lies that are put in amongst it. And I'd make no excuse for using that word. The money for surveys, they're expensive, but they're definitely well spent because they provide indisputable evidence to counter those lies. We've also learned, just like Astley, that freedom of information requests are essential to pursue that truth. And the absence of comparable surveys was cited in the inspector's report. And of course, these are ruinously expensive, but if you can afford it, really do try and spend some money on them. Next slide, please.
We've been fighting this for 5 years now, and donor fatigue and committee fatigue is real. There's quite a lot of, oh God, it's you guys again. Or worse still, there's apathy. There's no point fighting. It's a fait accompli. It's all brown envelopes under the table. So you have to fight against that. We are often described as a sea of green. We have very visible T-shirts and we put ourselves about widely, not quite to the opening of an envelope, but not far off. For fundraising, the most important thing is to have a committee that are engaged and to have events that there's only so many cake sales that you can do in any particular year. So we spend an awful lot of time investing in activities that can generate monies to fund our legal campaigns. We approach our local parish councils and our town councils. They have been a good source of income. Parish councils less so because they have small prefects and there are rules around making donations from precepts. We approach local celebrities, we approach landowners. We are lucky to be surrounded by lots of open countryside, not yet built on, with some very large houses. So we approach those people. The obvious routes for fundraising, like GoFundMe, although they obviously take a very small cut, donating via our website, events, and easy fundraising as well. But do be a little careful there, because they can be cries of hypocrisy, especially because some of the supporters of easy fundraising have very large logistics sites. Next slide, please. So what have we learned? We've basically learned that councils accept whatever developers submit to planning because it's about business rates. So campaign groups essentially have to do the planners' jobs. Developers are in control of the planning process, and they are dishonest. It's not fair. It's right, shall I say, they lie, because they do. The planning process is broken. It is no longer fit for purpose and is very much skewed in favour of the developers. Very disappointingly, the environmental agencies are dishonest, including within that Natural England, the Environment Agency and environmental consultants. The environmental agencies are meant to scrutinise, and increasingly we've discovered that they just essentially rubber stamp and do not carry out due diligence and cite resource implications or resource issues, the lack of, as the reason behind that. But the most worrying thing, of course, is this is all coming down from central government. So everybody, all the developers are hiding behind the need and growth. Build, baby, build, unlocking the planning process, specifically in the area of environmental objections, is coming down from central government, and that's a tough one to fight. The government need to make changes to protect the people who vote for them and let them into power, which is why we are engaging with MPs to set up an APPG to hopefully cut the head off the beast. Next slide, please.
So in terms of our legal experiences to date, we've been on quite a roller coaster, I have to say. We started by contacting ELF, which is the Environmental Law Foundation, and they did give us some advice and initial help, but they are overwhelmed with requests for help. So we had to move on and engage our own legal representation. And as part of that, to try and save your costs, you need to produce an awful lot of evidence. So a lot of work is required. So the first experience was having a hearing for one of the solar farms. And we had Rule 6 status for that, where we represented ourselves. It was cheaper, simpler, and a lot less stressful, and we won, which was very encouraging. The second one was an appeal for one of the logistics warehouses at Castle Manor Farm. Again, we had Rule 6 status, and it was expensive because we needed a barrister. We were very lucky to engage a KC, and I would advise that get the best you can afford, not a junior barrister, because the difference is amazing. And we also last week we were at an appeal where we had Rule 6 status again. This not only needed a barrister, but it needed an environmental solicitor who was an expert in that role, and another junior solicitor, which cost us around £53,500. This would have been higher if we'd gone via a solicitor, but fortunately we were able to go directly to the KC's chambers. So with regard to the judicial review for the warehouse on church land, we took North Northampton Council to the High Court for not following legal planning process. And to date, that has cost us £81,500. We may need to pay costs of around £10,000 on top of that, but if we win, we may be paid costs of £20,000. You'll also have to bear in mind that this has been delivered on a 50% deferred fee, meaning that without that, the upfront costs would have been £163,000 for the judicial review. So you can see how important it is to start really early and get your fundraising going as soon as possible, because that fighting fund is your strength. These are multi-million companies who can put their hand in their pocket easily. So just for an idea of costs, Staunch have raised in excess of £125,000 in 5 years so far. And think like you're getting a quote for building work on a house, factor in a contingency, double it, and you're getting close to what you might need. Also to bear in mind, it would be good for other campaign groups to engage services via VAT registered company so that monies can be reclaimed. Next slide, please.
So Staunch are working with many organisations, not least the CPA, who have been invaluable. Marge has been fantastic. With ALERC, with SEAM and local biodiversity record centres, the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management, so that we can challenge the dishonest environmental consultants that are out there. The APPG, as I've mentioned before, which is working with our local MP, Lou Barron, who is on board, and increasingly with a chap called Chris Hinchcliffe, who's in North Hertfordshire, whose green credentials speak for themselves. He's very active on social media, so do look him up. We have attempted historically to become a red charity. Almost understandably, we were declined because we were seen as a campaign group. Increasingly, our remit is expanding. And so, yes, we are absolutely a campaign group, but we are also undertaking other roles within local communities and advising in advisement capacity mostly. Becoming charity obviously would be the ultimate aim, but we shall see. Next slide, please.
Our final message to everyone is, well done, everyone. Keep going, because we need to work together on this injustice that is happening across the country. But do pace yourselves and look after each other, because campaigning can take over your life, and you do need to be able to stand up at the end of the day. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ladies. That was brilliant. And yes, I agree. We need to work together to address this huge injustice which is happening to so many communities. I'm going to hand over now to Stuart Dudley from the Protect Disworth campaign. Stuart, do you want to introduce yourself and your campaign?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Stuart Dudley. I've been a member of Protect Disworth for 2.5 years. And my role includes dealing with some of the technical aspects of the applications and also engagement with other groups, which is something I particularly enjoy. We've got plenty of other members in the team who deal with politics, communication, funding, and what have you. Now, we found the CPA to be one of the most supportive groups that we've dealt with, but we also deal with the CPRE, and I know they're present on the call, so I want to thank them as well. Both have been really supportive. I just want to go through 3 slides now to show you why I'm actually sat here talking to you today. So the next one. So this here is the village that I live in. It's a beautiful rural conservation village in a shallow valley surrounded by the farmland that the farmers have been farming for the last 2,000 years. It really is a place where anyone would want to live, and I've aspired to live here for decades, literally, and moved there 3 years ago. Okay, next, please. Okay, so this is the future if we residents don't do anything. And something that we really know is that no one else is going to tackle this for us. You know, we're on our own, working on this with our allies, of course. The scale and the proximity of what you see in that big picture isn't an exaggeration. We're talking about 250 acres of B8 sheds on high ground overlooking the village within 200 meters of homes. We're looking at 18 months at least of bulk earth moving. It's going to be like an open cast mine. You can see all the dust and the noise, vibration, and the construction is going to take 5 years or more before the 24-hour operation even begins. And that picture on the right, that sort of dystopian view of the future, is actually not that different to the reality for some people already. The planning system really doesn't protect people from this stuff. Okay, the next one, please. So this map shows you the extent of the destruction that's planned for us. That little red dot in the middle is the village of Dysworth, and we have 3 major planning applications around us. And that isn't all. There are others in the emerging local plan. On the right there, the blue site, that's the 250-acre site. There are 2 competing applications to develop that one site. The designation of this site was done without any consultation with or consideration for the village. We weren't even aware of it until it was dropped into a conversation about a completely different subject. In fact, the subject was the new town. We found that both members that are trying to develop that B8 site are members of the Freeport, and Segro want to compulsory purchase the East Midlands Airport land, and Prologis, who are working on behalf of East Midlands Airport, want to actually buy Segro out. So you can see what's going on. You couldn't make this stuff up, really. So the next 3 slides I'm going to go through are from a presentation that we recently did for politicians and residents in the village hall, just to give you an idea of the sort of communication that we feel we're obliged to show them. This one shows the extent of recent and ongoing workload. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the details other than to say thousands of hours of work, many meetings, face-to-face ones included, FOIs, hundreds and hundreds of pages of submissions. This isn't going to end. I can only sum it up by saying it's a whole load of hard graft and a whole load of sleepless nights, and that's where it's at. Campaigning isn't for the glory, it's tough, but we do it because if we don't do it, no one else is going to. Okay, next please. This is a list of our achievements, and the reason that we present this information is because we need our supporters and donators to know what it is that they're buying into. Again, there's quite a list there. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to pick 1 or 2 out. So with regard to the DCO, we've had a significant impact on the process. We've very heavily influenced the examining panel's questions, and quite often the examining panel are firing arrows for us if they're disregarded by the applicant. Sometimes we are the biggest source of questions on any particular subject. We also identified a significant issue within the application, which resulted in further scrutiny by the examining panel, and it's actually resulted in a requirement for quite a significant rejig of the application altogether. Other things, we've secured an area of separation to 3 sides of the village in the draft local plan, despite opposition from planners, and that was done in person at a planning meeting. So sometimes feet on the ground is the way to do these things, and we're really pleased that we've done that. Unfortunately, that area of separation doesn't include the side where the B8 sheds are going to be. Something else we're very proud of is partnering up with the CPA on the B8 campaign. We've been involved from the outset, including the report, a survey that we wrote, and the petition, and of course this webinar. We're very pleased indeed to be involved. Next one, please. This is an overview for our residents of where we're going next. There's a whole load more work to do on the B8 applications. DCOs require prompt responses to tight deadlines, and it's a very strange process. So the work comes in fits and starts. You can be doing nothing for a little while, and all of a sudden there's this tidal wave of work comes as you're meeting deadlines and you're responding to other people's submissions. The parish council are actually leading the opposition to the new town application and the draft local plan, and we're in a supporting role there. This is due to resourcing and the sheer vast volume of work that we've got ahead of us. But we do work very closely with the parish council, and the head of the chair of the parish council attends every single one of our group meetings. Okay, thanks. Okay, this is a snapshot of some of the things we've learned along the way. It's a process of learning on the job very much. None of us are planning experts. You know, you really have to find your feet as the process goes on. And I'd say the first thing I've learned is what a B8 shed is. 3 years ago, I was blissfully unaware of B8 sheds, and here we are, how things can change in a short time. The first thing I want to mention is deferral. So outline planning applications and flexibility in the DCO can move important decisions to a later stage. This is after the decision's been made. Once these things are moved and the principle of the development's been approved, we've got less influence over the outcome and fewer opportunities to challenge key aspects of the scheme. So make sure you try and constrain the mitigation and things like that before the decision if you possibly can. The next thing is planning decisions. They balance harm against benefits. Harm is generally assumed, and the benefits have to outweigh that. So it's really important that you scrutinise the benefit claims, such as job creation or economic growth. We've already seen earlier in the presentation, job creation can be overstated, and it's quite often it can be relocation. For the same reason, we must thoroughly check the vast environmental statements for areas where harm might be understated. And if you take the time and trouble to do that, you're going to find areas where things are understated. AI can be a powerful tool for condensing and finding inconsistencies, assumptions and omissions. Of course, it must be used with care. Of course, you must check the output and you must understand the things that you're submitting. But in terms of taking vast amounts of information and condensing it into a manageable amount, it can be quite useful. In terms of building height, there's no upper limit on what an applicant can ask for. And even where heights are controlled, they may later seek variations or amendments. So it's important you challenge early and keep on challenging. The next one you might not think of is mezzanine floors. So once planning's been accepted and things get built, you may well see an application for a mezzanine coming in. And this mezzanine might well add 30, 40, 50% or even more onto the floor space. And it's unrealistic to think that that's going to come without a cost to local communities in terms of noise, traffic generation and so on, even if the applicant says that that's not the case. And the last one is planning conditions. They can be our friend. They're an essential part of the planning system, but securing a condition is only the beginning. They then require continuous monitoring and enforcement and protection from later attempts to vary or remove them. We actually had a motorway service area approved in our vicinity some years ago, and one of the main conditions of that was a nature reserve, which is now existing, and very lovely it is. And the planning authority have now thought it appropriate to approve an application to build a solar farm on that site. So that's one of the last bits of green space in our neighbourhood that is now going to be spoiled. So we're going to come to key takeaways now. I think these are some of the main points, certainly for me personally. The first one is don't lose sight of your ultimate objective, because that is where your motivation is going to come from. Certainly for me, the sense of injustice, the sense of fighting bullies, that's what keeps me going every single day. But you must not ignore opportunities to secure mitigation and incremental improvements along the way, because if you don't get that ultimate decision, you'll find that you need these things as a backup, as a plan B. Okay, the next thing is, and both previous speakers have said this, campaigning will absorb a lot of your time and energy. You must protect your own health and that of your family and the finances of your group. Otherwise, things will get unsustainable pretty quickly. If you need to take little time outs, do that. Vigilance, that wins battles. Many of our opportunities have arisen from spotting something in the documentation that no one else has noticed. And I think in the past, applicants have relied on the huge amount of documentation to hide things that they don't want us to find. But we've already had several little wins in that area. Expert help is something that's been mentioned before, and it can transform your prospects. The right expert deployed at the right time can have more impact than months of volunteers' effort. And also, a barrister isn't a luxury. They can tip the balance in your favour if used at the key stages. However, these sort of people who work with action groups aren't easy to find. Many of them are following the money. Many people we've approached were already working for the applicants that we are trying to fight. So when you do find good ones, use them strategically and make the most of every single hour that they give to you. Just as important as the experts are your colleagues, though, and teamwork, as other people have said, the parish council Casual helpers as well. We find we have lots of people who come and go and help us on all kind of different things, including events and what have you. And the village residents are great. Sometimes we need them to attend our meetings. We need them to respond to applications and what have you. So you must keep them informed at all times. If you have a communication outage, it will result in a loss of engagement. And we did find that earlier in the year, we had a bit of a big gap between village hall meetings. The attendance following the gap was not as good as we previously had. So we gave a very strong message in that meeting, and we followed up with another meeting quite soon after, and the engagement then and the attendance was fantastic. So we really learned that lesson. You must keep the engagement, you must keep the communication going the whole time. Lastly, money. We've heard quite a bit about that. Money isn't everything, they say, but I would say it nearly is everything, actually. Gather as much as you can, because it will limit your horizons. Spend as wisely as you can, and keep the donors informed regarding the value for money that they're getting, because it's important that they understand where their money's going. Okay, so just to finish then, I'm going to try and finish on a positive note if we can. The first thing is you can win. The Hinckley rail freight interchange is one example where many people got together, including CPRE, and tackled this one. You must also learn that most campaigns don't achieve everything that they set out to do, but very few actually achieve nothing at all. It is not a binary process, this. Every objection, representation and challenge and condition can influence the outcome. Communities like ours, they often feel powerless, but persistence can be rewarded just as much as expertise. So we must organise, learn the system and work together, and then we can have a real influence on the outcomes. And I'm talking about local and national here. And the CPA is a fantastic marshalling point for all of us. And I really would like to thank them for everything they're doing for all of us. And the last message is never give up. There's everything still to fight for. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Stuart. That's brilliant. And thank you to all three speakers, actually. I think they were three very insightful presentations. So, Caroline, I just want to turn to you now. Before we sort of summarise and wrap up, do we have questions in the chat? And by the way, everybody, if you've got a question, please do put it in the chat now. You'll have noticed that you haven't got cameras and microphones on. But if you have got questions, do please raise them.
Hi, Marcia. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
There was one very specific question about whether anybody has dealt with a developer called Tony Knowles of F1 Developments. If they have, maybe they can put that into the chat, and maybe we'll check it up after the event. Then second question, actually it was for Staunch, but it could be true for the others. Which barrister and chambers did you use, and would you recommend them? Because presumably if they've been through the process once, perhaps they wouldn't reinvent the wheel if they did it again. And actually, shall I do the third question, which was mine, and it was, would it help if there was a financial bond to accompany conditions that are put down in the event that a company either reneges on its promises or indeed goes bust? So they were the three which I don't think got answered already.
Okay, well, I think on that last one, I'd say yes, let's make it a recommendation. But let me just go back to Sharon and Stuart and John. Sharon, you specifically have dealt with some barristers, haven't you? Who were they?
Yeah, I'm just typing it in now. Our barrister is Paul Stinchcombe from 39 Essex Chambers.
Super.
He's KC.
Yeah.
He's been very supportive.
Super. Okay. Thank you for that. We'll pick that up. Stuart and John, have you dealt with legal teams?
So we have. Oh, sorry, John, you go first.
Sorry, Stuart. We a local, well, not local, a solicitor company from Liverpool offered his services pro bono to us, and has kindly also engaged a KC when we've needed one for expert advice. But I'm a little bit, because it was pro bono, I'm a little bit reticent to
Reticent,
give
yeah.
out his name at the moment.
No, but if you could ask him, John, you know, we'd be delighted to publicise what he's done for you.
Yeah.
Stuart, before we move on from this, any comments from Dysworth?
Okay, so we're quite lucky that we've got a recently retired lawyer in the village, and he's kind of headed up all the political aspects of stuff. And he engaged a junior barrister for us. Now, it's a very, very tiny village, so we don't have a huge area to call for funds, but the junior barrister has paid dividends in that when he's attended DCO meeting in person, he has had quite an impact for us. I can't tell you the name offhand, but I think one thing that's becoming apparent to me is that when we find people who are sympathetic towards campaign groups, we should have some kind of register, you know, whereby they can get more business, and we have the benefits of using them. But the last thing
I would just mention, sorry, Stuart, while you're on that topic, that I think we do have a list of experts on the CPA website. So, Caroline, maybe you could put that in the chat, and we can. Super.
The last thing I would say is we have got a DCO consultant on on our side, and that's proved to be an absolute marvel as far as we're concerned. And we've managed to actually hand over quite a bit of the management of the process to him. So very useful.
Super. Yeah, I mean, I think it does actually show yet another area of inequality in the whole planning system, doesn't it? Because if you're in an area where you're likely to have experts such as those that you have mentioned on the call, you know, legal experts, social media experts, and many others that help our campaigns, that's fantastic. But if you're a community that's perhaps very deprived and doesn't have those sort of people available to them, then it puts you in an even more challenging position than you are as a deprived community anyway, which is likely to be suffering from greater levels of pollution, greater risk of flooding, and now a greater list of a greater risk of not being able to challenge these things because you don't have that level of expertise in your local community. So, okay. Yeah, I agree with Caroline's point. If anybody's got experience of dealing with that particular developer whose name I've forgotten now, please put it in the chat or write to us afterwards, and we can link people up with, I think it was Maggie that raised the question, wasn't it? Okay. Let's just look at, because we are getting towards the end of the webinar, and I'm keen for us not to run over by too much, but there are a number of things that we plan to do, and it's great that Staunch, for example, are looking at setting up an APPG with their MP. Fabulous that he's supporting them, and I'm sure other MPs would support that sort of campaign, given how much these warehouses are impacting their communities. We've already seen that the petitions reached 10,000 signatures, so we're eagerly awaiting the government's response. Let's keep our fingers crossed, although I'm led to believe that the MPPF that's about to be issued doesn't have many changes from the version that was consulted on. But we do need to keep pushing on that petition because we want to reach the 100,000 signatures, which would mean there would then be a debate in Parliament. And if all the community groups that have one of these warehouses in their backyard could secure 500 signatures from local people, we'll be able to reach that 100,000 target. So let's have a specific campaign to try and get us up to that 100,000 now. There's many other things that we want to look for going forward. I want to just talk about the compensation issue, because we'd specifically like the government to introduce and regulate compensation for residents that are impacted, including retrospectively for campaigns such as the one that John's running. And I think there were a couple of others where they are suffering the effects, but beyond the time period where they can take a judicial review. And I think, John, you've already shared this with your MP, Michael Wheeler, haven't you? And yeah, we'll be asking you, participants and other supporters, to write to your MPs to try and secure this agreement to compensation, because the developers should be building this into the cost of their development. And Rosie, I know you're reading a book on development viability at the moment, and developers will challenge any additional costs that may impact them. But I think this is something that we really must secure for communities, because we're making these approvals for giving permission for these developments, and it's real people who are suffering. The health is suffering. Their finances are suffering. Somebody told me about losing over £200,000 from the value of their property as a consequence of being adjacent to one of these warehouses. Nobody should be expected to just accept that that's the norm. So I think this whole compensation issue will be our next campaign, along with a couple of other things. And I don't want to sort of go through these in any detail, but one of the campaigns that's involved with us has a warehouse built because outline planning permission was given 75 years ago. 75 years ago. Now, that's clearly a loophole in the planning system that must be changed. And so we'll be looking at this as a key action as well. And I'm going the wrong way. So I'm conscious of the time. Any final questions, Caroline, before I sort of draw us to a close?
No, all covered. No, thank you,
all
Marge.
covered. Thank you. Okay. Well, all that remains for me is to say a huge thank you to the speakers for the time they've taken in bringing together these presentations for us today, and for spending the time on the webinar, and to everybody that's taken the time to participate. This is a huge issue. So we've done the recording. We will be creating an action list to be sent to the MHCLG. There is a checklist in our Besieged by B8's report, including a draft letter for your MP, but we will be updating that. And just a final plea to sign and share the petition if you haven't done it already. If you have, please share and share again. We do want to try and reach that 100,000 signatures. Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing now, and thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording too. So let's do that. Okay.